thrilled to intro us into the last conversation all about how we redefine success at work, in our partnerships, families, and in our personal lives. So without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce and hand over the mic to author Ashley C. Ford and CEO Anne Shoket.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Ashley C. Ford. Thank you, Molly.
Hi, Anne Shoket.
It's so nice to see you. I'm looking at the list of people who have joined us and where they're coming from. And I see a lot of listers. I see a lot of warm and friendly faces. Well, not faces, but I see warm and friendly names. And I am so excited about this conversation. I have been plotting and planning and listening to you read your book to me. Frankly, I've been following you for years. We don't know each other very well, but we've been in the circle around each other. We've rubbed New York media elbows, as you do. But I'll tell you this, Ashley C. Ford. Everyone says nice things about you. and it's always you. It's like as if the red carpet rolls out ahead of you and everyone says, and for years, this is not just since you've become a major best-selling New York Times bestselling author. For years, everyone has said, oh, you have to know Ashley C. Ford. Oh, Ashley is so interesting. She's amazing. You have to have her at dinner. She's the most fun. She's the most interesting. And look, compliments like that don't come cheap. And so it's true. I sense it is true about you. I have admired and followed you for years. I was so moved in reading your book that as I was listening to the end of the book, I was sobbing big, fat, giant tears on a walk around my neighborhood. And then of course I ran into a neighbor and I had to explain that I was like sobbing tears, and I actually invited her to join us tonight. So hopefully she'll come in. So in any case, I know that you have been promoting this book all summer, and you have, you've made every major big stop around the world. I was just saying to Ashley that I made the huge mistake of listening to Ashley's podcast with Brene Brown today in preparation for this chat. So the stakes are high, the pressure is on. But I wanted this conversation, I want to be a little different because to me, your book is the foundation that I want to stand on, because you learned so many lessons, but I want you to give those lessons to the women who are here today, that the things that you know about life and meaning and purpose and defining who you are and overcoming trauma are things that we all wrestle with and need guidance and advice and sage leadership. And so that, as I'm thinking about the ways in which I want this conversation to be different than some of the others that you might have had around the book, I want to talk about, what do you know about life that we all need to know? No, but so I'm starting you there.
Not much. A few things, maybe, but I think we all know something that everybody else needs to know. I think that's kind of the point of being human.
Let's start here, because the book is so much about redefining who you are despite your past, because of your past, figuring out, growing into the person you're meant to be. Mm-hmm. And so what I want to know is, when did you realize that you deserved success? Because not a lot of people told you that you could have success.
Yeah. Sometimes I have I'm so specific with words sometimes. So it's like I have this little quibble with certain things. So deserve is weird, right? Because deserve usually means that you have earned something, like you have worked really hard to earn something and now you deserve it, right? Like you deserve your paycheck in general, not necessarily the amount, but you deserve to get paid for working, right? Success is something that I don't think um, I never really worried about what I deserved. I was more concerned about what I was worth. And I really, really questioned my worthiness to be in certain places, to be in certain company, getting the opportunity to do wonderful things that mark me as successful in our society. For a long time, even as those things appeared to me or were offered to me or were in some cases earned by me, I didn't feel deserving of them. I didn't feel worthy. And the worthiness was the much bigger issue. Because everybody, like, and I didn't know this at the time, that just by existing, you're worthy of the best this world has to offer.
That's a really hard, I think that's it's a hard thing to hold on to. I don't even know if I'm there, right? I hear you, I say deserve, and I hear the earningness and the hustle and the drive to earn it. But just by existing, you are worth it.
Yeah, you're worth everything, the best this world has to offer. I adamantly believe that things happen to us. We get chances and opportunities to do things if we're lucky. But for the most part, we're just people who are here. And I think that success is one of those things that we also have to play with our definition of, because what success to me is not going to be success to you. I had a lot of issues with having success that I didn't define as success. I was grateful and I felt worthy sometimes of these things, but they weren't. When I made a list of the things that I counted as making me successful, this is what makes me feel successful, this is how I define success, they just weren't on that list. And I realized that I need to start focusing my attention towards the things that I want, the things that I desire, the places where my curiosity pulls me. I need to start focusing on that. I need to start really letting myself be intentional in that space, because success is another, like love, like hate. Success has an individual definition for everybody who experiences it. So I think first I had to tell myself, yeah, you're worthy of any success that you want. But then I had to ask myself, so what's success to you?
And so
what does that look like?
And what does it look like?
You want to know what success looks like for me? For me, success for me looks like waking up and doing more things I want to do than things I don't want to do. To me, I think that is the epitome of success, is that when I wake up and I go about my day and I look at what's on my schedule, I can look at my schedule and go, that's going to be fun. That's not going to be fun, but it's going to lead to something fun. So yeah, we're going to do that too. And that's going to be fun. And that's going to be fun. And it's not that everything is just super joyful and full of joy. It's just that success for me has been creating a life I don't hate, creating a life I don't resent, creating a life that the maintenance of does not draw the very life from me. Because no stuff I could get or no award I could get is going to be worth my peace. So that's what I prioritize.
I love that, a sense of joy and ease, right? That you're not, that not having something that you hate or resent. I hear that, resent. One of the questions, as I was thinking about your book, one of the questions that I used to always ask when I was writing my book was, when you were 16 years old, what did you imagine that your life now would be like?
At 34?
Yeah.
At 34, I thought I would be a working actress.
Really?
Yes, living in Chicago. Because that was really the biggest city I could fathom. Obviously, I knew there were bigger cities, but I hadn't traveled much. And at that time, that would have been the biggest city I could fathom, was Chicago. I would be married. I would have 1 or 2 children. And that was as much as I thought about my future at like 34. Absolutely. Absolutely. I thought it would look a lot different.
So how did you learn to dream bigger? How did you learn? How did you learn to have a bigger dream? How did you learn to have more possibility? One of the things that I hear from people again and again is they feel limited or small or unworthy or can't imagine, can't sort of see beyond the world, see beyond the people around them, right? Just like when I was growing up, the most successful woman in my town was like the local real estate agent, right? Yeah. And so if I wanted to be a hugely successful person, I was like, great, real estate.
Real estate. That's the way to go.
And so how did you learn to dream a bigger dream for yourself?
Well, first let me say I have anxiety and ADHD. So my ability to weave a catastrophe in my mind and spiral from the hypothetical reality of that catastrophe is just like nobody does it like me, baby. I can dig deep in there. And I realized at some point, or it occurred to me, that if I could imagine that far in the direction of how poorly things could go, maybe I could imagine at least that far in the opposite direction and think about, well, what if things go really well?
That's interesting.
What if things go really right? What if instead of spending all my time worrying about how badly this could go and planning for all the different ways it could go badly, like I'm not really going to get away from that, right? Like, so it's not really a but, it's just an and. It's like, if I'm going to imagine the catastrophe, then I'm also going to imagine the dream come true. I'm also going to imagine the happily ever after, because I don't want to have a brain that can only go in one direction. I don't want to have a brain that practices the catastrophizing and lets the muscle of dream imagination atrophy. That's just not what I wanted. And I think that when I realized that it was a practice, that all of that was a practice, that helped me a lot. Like, you know, I told my therapist at one point, I was like, I'm just so much better at imagining things going wrong than imagining things going right. And he said, of course, imagining things going wrong is what you practice. If you practice soccer for 10 years and decided you wanted to play basketball, you're not going to be great at basketball as soon as you start, as soon as you try. You might never be Michael Jordan, right? But if you practice basketball at least as much as you practice soccer, you're going to be pretty good at basketball. So that's sort of the way I try to think about it.
So was it not a realization until much later when you had a therapist to have these conversations with? I love that you, frankly, I love that you talk so candidly about having a therapist. I wish that we could all, like, you know, be so vulnerable in public, aware, self-aware about that. But was it not?
Though. Let me just say, like, I talk about it because I can. I'm very free to talk about it. And the risks of me talking about it are extremely low. So I talk about it a lot because because it's helped me so much. And I think that if I'm gonna talk to people and give them advice in certain circumstances, I should let them know how I got there and where that advice comes from in me.
Was therapy something, though, that came to you as an adult? It wasn't something that came to you as a young woman.
A pretty young woman. I was not allowed to go to therapy when I lived in my mother's home. So I snuck and got therapy as soon as I turned 18. It was my 18th birthday present to myself.
Wow.
was getting myself therapy. Well, I knew something wasn't right. I knew I needed some help, and I had a pretty good idea where to get it. And I'm glad I did, because that it really helped me out. It really, really helped me out.
You know, you describe yourself in your book a couple of times as being a weird kid.
Oh,
And
yeah.
as when you said that, and I say you said it because you read me the book in my ears, but when you said that, I thought to myself, well, there's nothing here that seems weird, right? Like all of this seems like regular stuff that everybody's wrestling with and everybody's going through. But I thought the idea that you thought you were weird sort of put you outside of an expected path of the way things should go.
Yeah.
And so did it feel good to be weird? Did it feel bad?
Yeah.
Think you were weird? I didn't think you were. I was like, what does she mean weird? She's doing cool girl things.
Yeah, we think of those as cool girl things now. But in the year 2000, not so much. I was pretty weird. I was weird for being very affirming of queer identities in the 7th grade. I was weird at the time for being into things like Golden Girls and yacht rock, things that are considered like quirky little pockets of the internet now, surrounded by my 80% Black classmates in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Trust me, it was not cool at all. I was by no means cool, but I was funny. And that's what saved me, was that I came from a funny family. I came from a storytelling family. Our favorite thing to do then and now is make each other laugh. And so by the time I got into the school system, that was a practice that I had been in for a really long time. And that practice saved me. Like that practice is essentially most likely why I didn't end up being pretty terribly like ostracized or bullied. Was just that even if I had weird interests, even if people felt like I spoke weird and why was I always carrying around a book and stuff like that, I made them laugh, and so we could be friends.
I was just reading the chat, and Julie Lithcote-Hames, who wrote a book called Your Turn. She is really an excellent writer about young adults and becoming an adult. And she wrote, it's important to validate how things have changed, that today's cool was yesterday's outside the bounds. And I can understand, I appreciate that you, you said you were weird when you talk about yourself being a weird kid, you said it with love, right? And appreciation for what was weird now, but also feels like that's cool now, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves Golden Girl. Everybody loves.
Yeah, now there's like Golden Girls t-shirts and mugs and puzzles. I have so much Golden Girls memorabilia from people who have known I've loved them for years. It's amazing. But when I was in middle school, it was not amazing. It was not. People were like, people would secretly be like, oh yeah, I watched that show. Me and my grandma watched that show on TV Land or whatever. But nobody was out here like a Golden Girls fan. Nobody was calling themselves a Dorothy.
I hear that you also have a Kenny Loggins obsession.
A massive Kenny Loggins obsession. For when I turned 14, I know that one of the things I asked for Christmas that year was a Kenny Loggins greatest hits CD called Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. And Michael McDonald's covers of Motown songs. Like those were the things I wanted. I think that was the last Christmas I got gifts. And I don't think it's because of the gifts I asked for, but every once in a while I wonder if my mom was like, this kid wants yacht rock records, colored pencils, and a teddy bear. She's 14. Like we gotta do something about her. But that's what I wanted. That's what I was into. That's what I liked. And I just always had this feeling like being myself was just the easiest thing to do. Pretending seemed a lot harder. And I didn't have the energy to maintain it. So it just became sort of a like, hey, you like me or you don't, but this is how I am.
I love that. And I want to connect the dots because, first of all, I love that we're laughing and you talk about the laughter and you talk about the joy. And I love just listening to your stories, but I want to connect the dots between becoming yourself, being true to who you are, even if it feels weird, even if everyone around you is going to college, getting a job, getting married, having kids, buying a house, straight line, 9 to 5 or whatever we're working these days. And, and how you and how we can redefine success for ourselves. Like, how can we think about the things that we are and who we are and turn those things into success?
Well, unfortunately, what a lot of people don't want to do, that you absolutely have to do, what a lot of people are very resistant to, whether they know it or not, is ask yourself.
Yeah.
Like literally ask yourself, write down some questions that you have about how you define success and follow those questions. Okay, I follow success. I define success this way. Okay, why do I define it that way? What's the ethos behind that? Because I think this is the most important thing in life. And so if I am getting to this point, then I am living a successful life. Okay, so what does that look like? Like, what does that look like? On a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis? What does it actually look like to be living a successful life for you? And I mean, does it mean waking up at 9? Does it mean waking up at 5 and going to bed at 9? Does it mean being able to make yourself breakfast every day? Does it mean being able to get up and go to your favorite cafe every day? Does it mean having the room to get up and have some quiet while you get started working and continue to work for the rest of the day? Is it going into an office every day? Is it leading a team? Like, what does success actually look like for you? Not just in the context of your work, but in the context of your life, because you've got to live your life. Every day, you've got to be you. So anything you can do to make life easier for you, and having a definition of success and being able to decide what fits that definition and can leave your life in your calendar and what does and can stay, being able to discern that way is only setting yourself up to have the kind of existence right now that you actually want. Not some existence in the future, but right now.
How did you separate yourself from the messages you were getting from your mother, from your grandmother about what were your possibilities in the world?
I was always so much more out in the world than my mother and grandmother were. They were so insulated in our family that I knew that there were perspectives they just weren't considering. And I also knew that my family tends toward the pessimistic, which manifested itself in whenever I was excited about something, whenever I was excited about trying something. My mother and my grandmother, as much as they loved me, would immediately start talking to me about all the ways this could go wrong and all the ways I could end up disappointed. But after a while, I was so used to them having that reaction that I was doing it in my head before I even told them about it. And then eventually, I just stopped telling them about it. Like, I just stopped telling my family about what I was doing and what I was up to, because I realized that what I wanted from them, they weren't capable of giving me at that time. And it would not have considered that it would be useful to me to just be supportive. And so I put up a boundary around that part of my life. And I had to be really clear with my family about the fact that the boundary was not to keep them away. It was really to, like, keep us in each other's lives.
I want to talk about there were two things in there you said that were so interesting to me, but I want to talk about those boundaries, right? Because so much of your book is about having no boundaries and learning where those boundaries are, right? The boundary between you and your
Right.
mother and your grandmother, and maybe building a boundary between you and your father is a pretty kind of literal boundary that you had to bridge to go see
Yeah.
him in prison.
Yeah. A very intense boundary.
Yeah, a very intense boundary. And actually, I want to just say, because you were talking a lot about writing this book on the list as you were doing it. And so I got a little sneak peek into some of the emotional, personal journey that happened before you even get to the book, Amazing Personal Journey, but what the work that you had to do to put in to get to that book. So, I mean, the book shows the work. It is brilliant.
Thank you.
And I was so grateful to have had that sneak peek insight into the process. But talk about boundaries. Tell us all about how you have to learn to draw boundaries.
This is so funny because I'm actually writing about this right now. But one of the things that I've learned about boundaries, aside from the fact that boundaries are not to keep people away, they're actually to keep them in your life. When you communicate your boundaries, that's what you're attempting to do. It's not like I'm putting up this boundary because you need to go away. In most cases, with people that you love or like or care for, it's usually like I'm communicating this boundary because I need you to know where my boundaries are. And love respects boundaries. So the thing that I've been writing about recently is that boundaries also exist on a spectrum. They exist in a place where there are extreme boundaries. You know, some people go no contact with other people. And then there are soft boundaries. And soft boundaries do not mean that they're necessarily malleable. It just means that they're not as intense as something like a no contact. So it's something like, hey, I can't take calls before 9. Like, look, you call me every day, just don't call before 9. Very soft boundary, right? And when we express our boundaries to people, we are always worried that they are going to react to soft boundaries as if they are hard boundaries. And that makes us want to be a little bit more malleable or flexible with our soft boundaries. But the problem is that when people violate our soft boundaries over and over, we forget to protect our hard boundaries as well, because we're just not in the practice of protecting our boundaries at all. So one of the things that is very, 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 very important to me when in my relationships, with my colleagues, with my family, whoever it is, I don't let the soft boundaries go unchecked. If I have a soft boundary and you violate it one time, I might be like, hey, that's a boundary for me. You know, I'm just telling you. And no matter how you react to that, that's still my boundary. If you continue to poke at or violate my boundary, it's a hard stop for me, because that lets me know that before I even get to the place where I'm communicating my bigger, badder boundaries, you're incapable. You are not willing to respect me. And I demand respect now. And that's a lot easier for me now because I love myself now and I respect myself now. And it's really important to have those things in place. Your love for yourself, your respect for yourself, they have to be in place, because a boundary that you set but allow people to violate over and over again is just an act. It's an act of self-harm. That's just self-harm. Why do it? Why do it?
I love when you said that you are not responsible for someone else's reaction. You are setting your boundaries and you're not responsible for how they react to that. I think that's really a hard lesson to learn. That's one of those, like, That's like master class level.
I think, well, it's because we hate it. Like, you set a boundary and then somebody you like or love reacts in a way that's like you hit them or you've harmed them by setting the boundary. And they might really feel that way. But does that make it reality? The fact that they feel harmed by you just saying, you can't say that to me or do that to me, or this doesn't work for me, the fact that they feel harmed by that, it can't be your problem. Like, it just can't. I think sometimes what happens is that we set a boundary and somebody reacts poorly and we think, oh, I should have never set that boundary. No, no. Because if it hadn't been this boundary, it would have been another one.
And it's not always, I actually find the most poisonous for me, the most poisonous reactions are not, it's not anger or like, it's like, you've made a mistake by setting that boundary. Oh yeah, well then you're just walling yourself off from opportunities, success, fun,
yes,
friendship, what I'm trying to offer you. And it's as if you've made the mistake by doing that. Margaret Detweiler asks a really interesting question in this moment. She says, do you have a good response, Ashley, when someone violates a boundary, especially a soft boundary? Do you have something like something you say?
I mean, I don't think I have a script for it, but you know, if I was talking to someone right now and they violated a soft boundary, we were just having a very pleasant conversation and they did or said something that for me is just a hard stop, no. I would say, hey, you probably didn't even mean to do this. And I definitely have never told you that this is a boundary for me, but it is. And I would really appreciate it if you could just not say that to me. Not say that around me, not do that in my presence, whatever it is. And then they react, however they react, and I'm good. Now, if they violate the boundary after they've been told, all I'm gonna do is say, hey, I told you that was a boundary. It's feeling kind of like you either don't care that that's my boundary or you're not capable of maintaining that boundary with me. So do we need to talk about some ways that we can maintain that boundary, or is this just not a good fit?
It must be so special to be in your inner circle. I feel like you really like set the bar high, but you, even when you kind of, I was listening, what if Ashley said to me that I had crossed a boundary for her? Even as you were saying it, I was like, oh, I can understand that. I appreciate that. I felt like you were being gentle and loving and drawing a firm line.
Which is how I would be with someone who I felt gentle and loving about.
Oh, well, that's nice. And thank you. I do want to say to the folks who are listening, please ask your questions in the chat. I'm picking out some as we go, but Molly is actually compiling some questions that I'm not going to see because I'm so deeply engaged with Ashley here. So please ask your questions and I will make sure that we get to them. You said something else. I want to like zoom back 2 questions. You said something else that I wrote down, which was to talk about disappointment. And you said that you braced for disappointment, planned for disappointment. And we had a little, even in our like pre-chat about how this would go, you sort of schooled me in how you overcome this thinking about disappointment. Talk about a disappointment to everybody here.
Well, I don't know that I overcome disappointment. It's more so that I have realized that I cannot disappoint myself to keep myself from being disappointed. Like, I can't,
right?
As a protection, I can't say no to things I really want to do and think that, yeah, because if I do it, it might turn out this way and then I'll get disappointed. Okay, but now I'm disappointed because I just turned down something that I really want to do.
Yes.
So I didn't really get rid of disappointment. I just essentially disappointed myself so that I didn't have to find out if I would be disappointed in the future. And that's just one of those self-sabotaging behaviors that I was incredibly wrapped up in for most of my life up until probably the past 3 or 4 years. But before that, yeah, it was absolutely well, I'm not even gonna apply for that. I'm not even gonna try out for that. I'm not even gonna do that because you know what? It'll probably not work out. I'll probably not get it. It's probably not gonna happen. I thought that it would be like, if you don't want it, if you tell yourself not to want it, if you turn it down and it comes to you anyway, well, then it's just like this surprise. It's just a thing that happened. It's not a thing that you sought out. But that doesn't make it better for me. That doesn't feel more like success for me. The only reason that sounds safer to me is because I at no point have to make myself vulnerable in the process of getting what I want. And that's just never going to happen. That's not the way to have a life that you choose. It's not a way to have a life that you intend. It's a way to have the life that just shows up. And I just didn't want to relinquish control in that way. In trying to control my emotional reactions, I was abdicating the control I actually have over my life and over my opportunities. I just don't want to do that anymore.
You are saying what is so much the internal voice in my head. Probably so many of the women here listening have the same internal voice that says, don't want it so bad. Don't plan for it. Don't hope for it. Don't strategize. Don't go so hard for it. You're just going to be all the much more disappointed. And I hear that limiting talk so often from people, and I hear it in myself, and I thank you for being so candid about that, because I think that's right. I think that's how that there's no one else who's doing it to us. We very often do it to ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Not all the time. Ourselves.
Yeah, but quite often, yeah, you try to make yourself a little more invisible, a little smaller. You try to make your dream, your desire, your want, whatever, a little smaller. Not because you feel like, oh, well, then it's more attainable. Why do you want to attain what you don't want? Why do you want to go get something that's not for you? It don't feel right to you. It don't sound like something you want to do, something you want to have, but it's easier to get, you think, than what you actually want. So let me go get that. Why?
Do you have a plan? Do you make, I don't know this about you. I'm just asking this question. It's a very bad journalism to ask a blind question and not know the answer, but do you make plans? Do you have a vision? Like, do you have a 5-year plan? Are you a 10-year plan? Or do you have a wish? Do you have a dream board?
No. I try to stay really curious about what my life could be, you know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a plan. Plans can change. You can be really flexible with a plan. You know, plans are sometimes really useful. But when it comes to my career or something like that, I find that for me to have a plan, I would have to have a desire to do things that I'm not doing right now. When I have a desire to do things that I'm not doing at the moment, I make a plan. Like I make a quick little, you know, like this is how I want to make this transition into this other thing I want to try. I do that. Otherwise, I'm a free bird, baby. I'm out here in the wind. And it's not really, it's not really because, like I said, it's not, I don't see anything wrong with having a plan. It's just that I tend to be a person that when there's a plan, I try to adhere to the plan more than I adhere to myself. And with my life in general, with my career, I don't want to do that. And it's never worked out for me. I've had a lot of career plans over the course of my life. My career doesn't look like any plan I ever had, doesn't look like anything I even dreamed of, but it makes me feel good. It makes me happy. It feels meaningful. I get to do things that make me feel like I'm contributing, make me feel like I'm creating, and make me feel like I'm not hurting anybody. And that's really, really hard to have.
That's really hard to have. That's really hard to, well, it's hard to want, right? To want all of those things. I feel the same way. I don't have a big plan. I've always admired people who do, who have the, and who make vision
Me too.
boards. But I'm like, well, what's the next big opportunity? Let's look around. I want to create from what's in front of me. But I occasionally worry, like, I would never make a bucket list, but I'm like, well, does that mean I'm not dreaming big enough? Do I not?
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't think so. I think, something that I want to do someday is I want to make a movie. I know that someday I want to make a movie. That day is not today.
Who's gonna play you in the movie,
but I know
Ashley?
that.
Who's gonna play you?
Not about me.
Come
not
on.
about me.
Somebody's daughter is a movie waiting to be waiting.
When I think about who would play me in a movie, I never know, because I look like a young Whoopi Goldberg, and who looks like young Whoopi Goldberg except Whoopi Goldberg?
I feel like there's some good, we'll have to do some social media casting. We'll like ask people around. Please feel free to put in the chat if you can think of who should play Ashley. I want to talk about, well, as long as we're talking about the big topics, I want to talk about something big that came up on the list the other day.
Yeah.
We had a really vulnerable conversation on the list. The list is a network of high impact women in media technology and entrepreneurship, people who are really operating at the highest levels, and they are devoted to helping each other achieve and succeed. And many of our conversations are at that really beautiful intersection between ambition and life, right? The ways in which your ambition, your drive, your success impact all the other relationships in your life. And so there was a wonderful conversation. Wonderful is the wrong word. It was heartening to know that other people were saying this, but talking about when you've reached success, when you have some boxes to tick, maybe some money in the bank, maybe some famous fancy parties that you get to go to, and the people around you are not so happy for you, can't enjoy your success, can't want to maybe undermine, and it ekes out, right? It's not always so direct. Sometimes it just comes out in lovely passive aggressive ways over the Thanksgiving dinner table. But I imagine that you are having some complicated conversations with some of the people who are closest to you in the face of this book, which is a huge success and also incredibly candid.
Yeah. Well, I didn't grow up with passive aggressive behavior, just aggressive. So I don't like passive aggressive behavior, kind of has no effect on me, because in order for passive aggressive behavior to work, you have to like play into it. Like you have to be like, I know that person's upset, but I'm going to pretend like I don't know, because if I say something, they'll pretend like I'm the problem and all the, whatever, like and it becomes this whole thing where it's like a bunch of arguments are happening in your own head, but there are no arguments happening between you and the other person. That takes way too much time for me. I don't do it. So when someone's being passive aggressive with me, I'm very likely to be like, yeah, you have a problem. Let's talk about it. Don't pretend you don't. Like you're saying things, you're being weird. Like, I understand that maybe you don't want to feel like you have a problem, or you don't want me to know that you have a problem, but it's very clear. I see it. Let's just talk about it. Because one of two things are going to happen. I'm going to walk away from here like feeling like we don't really work anymore. Or I'm going to walk away from here feeling like we work. And you are either going to walk away from here feeling probably a little bit closer to me because we got to have a real conversation and you saw that you could be real with me about your frustration or anger and you don't have to hide from me. And now we can start having like a real relationship and a real friendship. Or you're going to walk away from this being like, I'm still mad. And it's like she doesn't even care. Because if you keep telling me you're not mad, like I'm only going to press on that for so long until I just kind of ignore it. I'm not like, I can't follow people around being like, please forgive me for existing. But I had a conversation with a friend, one of my really good friends. We've been buds since middle school. And when we were growing up, people always thought we were siblings or related or something. And it's like we're a boy and a girl, but we have it's like we each have one half of a brain. Like we just think very much the same. We're very close. We've been very close since we were like 12 and 13. And we were having a conversation, and he knows how I am. He knows the passive aggressive isn't going to work for me. And he also knows that like I can pick up on those things. So just talk to me about it. And he said, I am kind of scared that I'm going to lose you. I'm kind of scared that your life is changing in a way that I won't be able to have access to you as my friend anymore. Which is a perfectly reasonable feeling when your friend is having some big, visible public success and you're watching all of these people figure out that, hey, I like this person, but that's your friend. And it's like, so how is this going to change our dynamic? Very reasonable feelings, but let's just talk about them. So I was able to say to him, as I was then able to say to a couple other friends who shared that, fear, that insecurity with me, that, I need you more now. I need you more. Like, this is not the kind of thing where because I have a certain kind of visibility or a certain kind of success, that now the power balance is off in our relationship. If it is, it's in your favor. Because there are going to be a lot of people who read this book and think they know exactly who I am. And they are going to try to tell me who I am. And when I'm not being who I am or who they thought I was and all of those things. And the more visibility this book has, which I'm grateful for the success, don't get me wrong, but the more visibility it has, the likelihood of those kinds of reactions get higher and higher and higher. My friends who have known me since I was 13 years old are the people who will keep me rooted to myself, who will remind me who I am and who I'm becoming and whether or not the changes that I'm making are in line with who I like. These are the people who love me. These are the people who care for me when other people just use the language of caring for me. Even if that's the best language they have. So no. This is not a thing where you're going to lose me because I need you more.
You had said when we talked about this briefly in our pre-call, you had said that you have really cleansed your life of anybody who is hater seems like the wrong word. But, I mean, you've cleansed anyone who's not on your side, right? Anybody who's trying to diminish or make you small or who's not rooting for you or who isn't trying to be. You've had to let them go.
Yeah, because that's their work. That's not about me, really. That's about them needing to do some work with and for themselves that they haven't done yet. And I'm not saying that everybody doesn't like me need to go work on themselves, please. Please. I do not agree with that. But I think that if you are feeling challenged in your friendship or relationship with me, specifically because I'm having some success and that just doesn't feel right to you, then in some way you are benefiting from me not being successful or by not seeing me as successful. And I can't imagine why I would have a person in my life, in my inner circle, in my presence, who needs me to be less than I am so that they can feel good about themselves. I can't have
Full stop. let's like all feel what you just said, because that is the truth. That is like the most true thing. You've said a lot of true things, but that is the most true thing that you have said, that is the key and underlying everything that we're talking about here today, which is power and success and influence and career and defining who you are, which is that why would you surround yourself with people who need you to be smaller?
You don't. You just don't. I mean, I know people come from all kinds of situations. People are in all kinds of situations with different circumstances. So I can really only speak for myself. But there are some things that are just true. And having people around you who do not believe in you and who don't support you and who don't want to see you do your best, you can't save those people. You can't, because it's not you with the tools to solve what needs to be solved for them. It's them, you know? And sometimes people have that like sort of like jealous thing going on, and that's a behavior that they've practiced for a long time. But those people who are self-aware know that about themselves, and they'll say, you know what? Starting to feel weird and jealous. Like I'm so happy for you. I promise that I am. It's just this thing that comes up in me where I got this scarcity mindset where I think that when somebody else has, that means there's less for me to have. Whatever they have. If they have, then there's less for me to have. And I'm working on getting out of that. Great. Thanks for being honest with me about what you're going through and your feelings. You want to talk about that? Can I support you in some way with that? You know, what does that look like, supporting you in this time and in this place? How can I support you with these feelings that are coming up right now? You know, because that's all I can do is support somebody who's already in the process of working on themselves. That's what I can do.
We just have a couple minutes. And so, my head is swimming with amazing questions I want to ask you. One of the things though, as you're talking about the things you have to say to yourself to find your success and who you are, have you found with all the big rooms that you've really had access to really step into in this last year, do you have to say something to yourself about feeling worthy about being in those rooms, or say something in the moment when you're on the phone with Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle and Oprah, and I'm sure there's a million, these are just the ones that are off the top of my head. I'm sure there's a million rooms that you're in that are big, powerful rooms.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've sort of inherited from a colleague. My friend Saeed Jones, when we worked together at BuzzFeed, I was having some of those worthiness issues and feeling very nervous about opportunities and chances and things like that. And Saeed pulled me aside and he told me about when he was having some of those same experiences. And his aunt told him, you just have to know that this is your real life. This right now is your real life. However you got here, whatever happened to bring you to this moment, that's all your life. So you're worthy of being where you are. Did you break in? Did you crash? No, you were invited and you showed up because this is your real life. And I tell myself that all the time now. It wasn't even said directly to me. It was somebody telling me a story about what was said to them. But I think about it all the time when I'm in those rooms and when I'm having those conversations, is that this is my real life. And however I feel about the fact that I'm here, I'm here.
And you were invited. You were invited.
And I was invited. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. I hope that everybody feels invited into their own success and their own power and their own big rooms. And Ashley C. Ford, this was an amazing conversation. I can't wait to watch the replay actually, so that I can really, I took a couple of notes so that I can really soak in even more of your wisdom. But I thank you so much for your time and your energy. Anyone who is on this call, please read, download listen to somebody's daughter. It is a powerful book, and you, Ashley C. Ford, are a powerful woman. And I thank you so much for being here for this conversation.
Thank you all for being here. And thanks for having me. Molly, thanks for having me. SoFi, The List. This has been a really great conversation, and I'm glad I got to partake.